Now crocodiles are more dangerous to humans than the native crocodilians of Florida.
Something impossible is happening in the canals south of Miami. A predator known for hundreds of human fatalities in Africa has been officially confirmed to be breeding in the Florida sun. This is not a timid local crocodile or a slow-moving alligator. This is a highly aggressive biological machine that tracks boats and refuses to back down when cornered. The genetic code shows these animals did not swim here. They were brought here and released. Now, a breeding colony is established right in the backyard of millions of people. It is not that simple though, because we only found the children. Florida Marsh Anomaly. March 8, 2012, Homestead, Florida. Just south of Miami, on the edge of the Cheatham Drain, a patrol team spots a set of eyes reflecting in the beam of a halogen spotlight. In the biology of the Everglades, this is known as tapetum lucidum. This is the layer of tissue behind the retina that grants night vision. Usually the color of that reflection tells you exactly what you are looking at. Alligators reflect red. Native American crocodiles reflect a softer yellow. But the separation between these eyes suggests a skull width that does not match the local census. The patrol moves in to tag what they assume is a large nuisance alligator. But as the boat drifts within 10 yards, the animal does something impossible. It does not submerge. It does not roll. It surges forward. It hits the mudbank and sprints. The creature lifts its belly completely off the ground and hits speeds of 9 miles per hour on land. By the time the rangers scramble onto the bank, the creature is gone. It disappeared into the sawgrass. They filed the report as an anomaly or a case of mistaken identity, but 4 years later, inside a sterile genetics lab at the University of Florida, a DNA sequencer would prove that the thing in the water that night was not a mistake. The tissue samples did not match the American alligator. They did not match the American crocodile. The sequence revealed a biological signature that belonged 7,000 miles away, in the Okavango Delta of Botswana. Experts thought they were dealing with a typical invasive species. They were wrong. The genetic dating suggested that by the time the team found them, the invasion had already been underway for a decade. To understand the gravity of this discovery, you first have to understand the rigid politics of the Florida Everglades.
The researchers cite a figure that there were at least 493 attacks on humans.
This is not just a swamp. It is a battlefield partitioned by millions of years of evolution. For the last epoch, the rule of law here has been enforced by two distinct kings. First, the American alligator. These are dark, armored, and everywhere. They rule the freshwater sawgrass. They are the brutes of the swamp, with a bite force designed to crush turtle shells. Second is the American crocodile. These are the ghosts of the glades. They are strictly coastal creatures, evolved for the brackish water where the ocean meets the swamp. Despite their prehistoric appearance, the American crocodile is surprisingly timid. They are reclusive fish eaters. In the history of the United States, there has never been a confirmed human fatality attributed to this specific species. They are shy, they are endangered, and they are incredibly fragile. Their population hangs by a thread, mostly clustered around the cooling canals of the Turkey Point nuclear power plant. The system worked because the boundaries were clear. Gators stayed in the fresh water, while crocs stayed in the salt water. But here is the catch. The environment began to shift in ways no one expected. Something was pushing the old kings out of their long-held territories. Hidden apex hierarchy.
Fossil evidence tells us that crocodilians have been around for over 80 million years, dating back to the time of the dinosaurs.
In the mid-2000s, the swamp began to change. The usual ambient noise of the ecosystem shifted. Fishermen in the Silver Bluff Creek area began reporting a change in the apex hierarchy. The large, dominant American crocodiles, which were animals that had held basking spots for 20 years, suddenly vanished. They were not gone, they were displaced. They had abandoned prime real estate. In biology, an apex predator only abandons its territory for two reasons. Either the food source collapses or a superior predator arrives. At the time, the scientific community had a convenient scapegoat: the Burmese python. This was the height of the python explosion. Giant constrictors were wiping out the mammal population, including raccoons, possums, and bobcats. When local residents reported seeing dark and aggressive lizards deep in the canals, biologists dismissed the claims. They assumed locals were misidentifying dark alligators or simply seeing pythons in the water. It was a classic case of cognitive bias. Experts saw what they expected to see, but the locals were insistent. They claimed these new reptiles did not act like gators. They did not bask passively. They tracked boats. They sat high in the water, watching. While the media focused on the war against the pythons, a second front had opened up in the water. A predator had slipped through the back door of the exotic pet trade, utilizing the python hysteria as camouflage. The first solid clue did not come from a sighting. It came from the remains of the fallen. Rangers began finding carcasses of smaller reptiles that did not fit the forensic profile of a python attack. A python eliminates its prey by constriction. It causes cardiac arrest through compression and leaves the skeleton intact. These bodies were sheared and torn apart with rotational velocity. This is the forensic signature of a death roll, but the bite radius was too wide for a gator, and the aggression level was too high for an American croc. The biologists suspected a rogue alligator was to blame, but they were about to discover that the creature patrolling Silver Bluff Creek was not just a different species. It was a biological machine operating on a completely different metabolic setting. This machine was growing 28% faster than anything else in the water. It is not that simple though, because the biology of this beast was entirely foreign. A new type of armor was appearing in the Florida sun. Geometric bone armor. The breakthrough did not happen in the wild. It happened in 1929, when a field team managed to capture a juvenile crocodile in the canal system near Miami. It was small, barely a hatchling, but immediately, the herpetology team at the University of Florida noticed something was wrong. In robotics, there is a concept called the uncanny valley. This is where something looks almost human, but small imperfections create a sense of unease. The same principle applies to biology. Dr. Kenneth Crisco, the collection manager at the Florida Museum of Natural History, examined the specimen. On the surface, it had the V-shaped snout of a crocodile, distinguishing it from an alligator. But the architecture was incorrect. The primary red flag was the dorsal armor. The back of a crocodile is covered in bony plates called osteoderms, or scutes. Take a look at the Native American crocodile. Its scutes are irregular. They are scattered, with wide spacing between the rows. It is an organic, chaotic pattern. But the specimen on the table was different. Its osteoderms were perfectly aligned. They were rigid and geometric. There were no gaps. This was not just a different skin pattern, it was a different blueprint for armor. Then there was the temperament. Native American crocodiles are flighty. When captured, they often thrash once and then go still. This is a survival mechanism to conserve energy. This specimen did not stop. It displayed a sustained, high-octane aggression that bordered on the extreme. It did not hiss. It emitted a low-frequency growl. This is a sound rarely heard in Florida waters. The team was baffled. Was this a mutation? Was it a genetic deformity caused by the runoff from the nearby nuclear plant? Or perhaps something even rarer, a hybrid? Hybridization between alligators and crocodiles is biologically impossible. They are too far apart on the evolutionary tree. They split 80 million years ago. But hybridization between two crocodile species is possible. The working theory became that an American crocodile had somehow crossed with a Central American species. This would create a mixed breed with an unpredictable attitude. But theories are not data. And the data the team was about to collect would shatter the hybrid theory entirely. For 2 years, the team monitored the area. They needed more samples. In 2012 and 24, they finally got them. They captured 3 more animals. But these were not hatchlings anymore. They were subadults. And they were growing at a rate that defied the laws of the Everglades. Reptiles are cold-blooded. Their growth is limited by heat and food availability. In Florida, an American crocodile grows slowly, carefully conserving energy in a competitive environment. But these new specimens were growing an estimated 28% faster than their native counterparts. In the wild, a 28% advantage is not just a statistic, it is a total takeover. It means you reach maturity faster. It means you reach the size of a top predator faster. It means you can consume the competition before they can consume you. What most people do not realize is that the DNA held a secret from another continent. The results from the lab were about to change Florida forever. South African lineage. The 2012 capture at Silver Bluff Creek confirmed the worst fears.
A 2016 study has confirmed the presence of Nile crocodiles surviving in the wild of South Florida.
The animal was not just fast in terms of growth, it was physically dominant. During the capture, the team witnessed the animal's response to being cornered. When a normal American croc is cornered, it swims away. This animal stood its ground on the canal bank. It lifted its body high on its legs. This is called a high walk posture, and it signals supreme confidence. The morphology was consistent. It had the geometric scutes and the short, broad snout. It had the aggression. Dr. Crisco knew that visual identification was not enough to declare a state of emergency. He needed the code. The team extracted tissue samples from the tail of the captured specimens. They packaged the vials and sent them to the sequencing lab. They were looking for a specific marker in the mitochondrial DNA. This is the cytochrome B gene. This gene acts as a biological passport. It does not just tell you what an animal is, it tells you exactly where its ancestors swam. The team expected the results to point to Central America, maybe Cuba or Jamaica. But when the sequencer finished its run in May of 2016, the coordinates it gave did not point to the Caribbean. They pointed to a river system known for harboring the deadliest interactions between humans and wildlife on the planet. The machine had found a match, and it was a match that meant the Florida Everglades had just become a designated danger zone. The results were published in the Journal of Herpetological Conservation and Biology. The DNA samples from the Florida specimens were a 100% match for the Nile crocodile. This was not just a biological curiosity, it was a worst-case scenario. The American crocodile is a specialist fish eater. The Nile crocodile is a generalist that takes down large mammals. It is responsible for an estimated 200 human fatalities annually in its native range.
Crocodile attack leaves very fatal injury or death.
It views anything that enters the water not as a threat, but as biomass. But the geneticists at the University of Florida found something even more specific buried in the DNA. Nile crocodiles are spread across 26 countries in Africa, but the Florida specimens did not match the populations in Egypt or Uganda. Their genetic markers were identical to a specific subpopulation found in the KwaZulu-Natal province of South Africa. This was the smoking gun. Crocodiles do not swim 7,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean. They certainly do not navigate from South Africa to South Miami. The connection confirmed that the cause was human. Sometime in the late 1990s, a collector imported specimens from this specific South African lineage. They brought them into Florida, likely illegally or with forged permits. And then, when the animals grew from cute 10-inch hatchlings into 6-foot monsters, the owners did what reckless people always do. They opened the cage door. And get this, the timeline suggests the nightmare is only beginning. The original breeding pair has been hiding in the grass for decades. The species identification was only the first half of the story. The second half was the timeline. Recall the specimens. In 2009, they caught a hatchling. In 2012, they caught a subadult. In 2024, another subadult. Genetic analysis confirmed that these animals were related. They were siblings. This implies the existence of a reproductive pair, a mother and a father, living freely in the Everglades. To produce a hatchling in 2029, the parents had to be mature. Nile crocodiles take about 10 to 12 years to reach maturity. This means the original breeding pair has likely been in the swamp since roughly 1998 or 2000. For nearly 15 years, two massive African apex predators were living, hunting, and reproducing in the Florida suburbs, completely undetected. Could these monsters already be living in the canals behind your own house without you knowing? What would you do if you saw those yellow eyes watching you from the grass? If you enjoyed this mystery, please like and subscribe for more.